Hello, my name is Megs Reynolds, and I am the Executive Director of the Doomer Agriculture Foundation. We are the national voice and champion for mental health in Canadian agriculture. We are working on our Talk It Out series, and this month our focus is on emotional shock or trauma. And joining us today is Wendy Bennett from AgSafe BC. Wendy, thanks so much for coming on. Can you further introduce AgSafe BC and tell everybody what you guys are all about?
Absolutely, and thanks for having us. It's AgSafe BC is the AgSafe Agriculture Association. We're the health and safety association for all agricultural producers in the province of British Columbia. We provide health and safety and much needed resources to anybody and everybody on farm, and more recently with a big focus on preserving mental health and well-being amongst farmers, including our wonderful guest workers who come and make sure that there's food on our tables all across the country.
Yes, and BC has not had an easy go. I want to say in the last 2 years, the amount that has gone on that's affected farmers has been um, pretty catastrophic, actually. Can you talk a little bit about, we're talking about emotional trauma or shock. So what specifically you guys do to help make sure that a farm is set up the best that they could be before experiencing anything like that?
They've had a hard time for sure the last couple of years between the heat dome and forest fires. And then, oh yes, this massive flood, avian influenza, significant outbreaks, and all of this happening during COVID, which didn't make it any easier by any means. So our biggest goal has been to provide the tools and resources for them to have somewhere to reach out. We were fortunate to receive some funding that allowed us to provide access to counselors to provide assistance where needed. And the biggest success has been some of the counselors attending sites after the flood where farmers were going to get supplies and to take care of themselves. And they were able to have time to spend with these counselors to really get to know what kind of things to look out for in themselves and each other.
That's such an important piece of bringing that mental health professional to where the producers are and the farmers are already going to be. And especially in a setting where something has happened and you're looking to create community and to also break down those barriers to receiving support, because it can be pretty challenging to pick up the phone and make that call versus standing beside someone drinking a cup of coffee and starting a conversation.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about, farming and agriculture, you mentioned some massive things that have happened in BC over the last couple of years. And one of the biggest challenges with agriculture is there's so much that is out of our control that affects our ability to be successful and our ability to farm. One of the things I want to make sure anyone watching this knows is that we're always so quick to say there's always next year. And so something happens and we go into, I'd say fight mode right away. We've got to get through whatever that is, whether that's disease in our animals or, our farm being affected by flooding. But at some point we need to find or create space to process what we've just gone on or what we've just gone through. And that might mean when we're at that point connecting with a group like AgSafe BC and finding out what resources are available through that. But it could also mean part of that could be planning for how to be better prepared next time when something happens. And I know you guys have some resources for kind of that emergency preparedness plan as well.
Very true. And a lot of it, a lot of the preparedness stuff that we've done is directly related to what if it happens again? And, on the emotional shock part, in November of 2022, when the term atmospheric river was used again by the weather meteorologists, people started to panic and there was true fear when they were talking to us and, just how can this happen to us again? So we've put together a series of resources that allow different commodity groups, if you will. So, I mean, it's very specific to dairy farmers versus poultry farmers. They have different situations, or if they're harvesting crop, and to allow them to understand the things that they should look for and that they should plan for, whether it's moving your animals or, having sandbag stuff available. With forest fires, there's a lot of work that's done on if you have to evacuate your farm and how to make sure that you've left information for responders when they do manage to get there about where to find you and how to take care of or how to access things on the space itself. So Beyond that, it's a lot of cards and pamphlets and brochures and stickers and things of that nature that just reminds them sometimes to just stop and take a breath and think about what they're doing before they go into fight mode, because that is the natural fight and flight are pretty natural for everybody, I think.
I was at a poultry conference in Nova Scotia this spring and speaking to a poultry producer who said COVID avian influenza multiple times. And he said the second time he found out, the first thing he did before doing anything else was he had a snack and he had a nap. And he knew that he couldn't change, the fact that it was there on his, in his barns, but he knew that he would be better prepared to go into fight mode if he could have a snack and a nap before doing so.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm like, that's amazing because we don't ever usually take that moment or hit pause and take that breath. We just go immediately into whatever we need to deal with. And especially when it's our animals, it's hard not to. But just the benefit that can come from being aware enough about our mental health and our mental needs to say, okay, what's going to set me up best to get through the next 24 hours and 48 hours and maybe month.
Very true. And recognizing on that front, recognizing that by taking an extra hour now, it could allow you to continue on for 6 or 7 hours. And how much are things going to change in that span of time when you're dealing with disease? Now, if you're dealing with the floods and the massive fires, that's a different story altogether, of course. But when you're dealing with something that gives you a little bit of latitude to provide preparation time, that can certainly be helpful.
Mm-hmm. When I think what you guys have done to assist on the planning side for those, emergency moments is probably more beneficial than a lot of people would realize, because that, one of the most overwhelming parts of agriculture is what feels like things are out of our control, especially if we then go into an emotional shock or, an event that is out of our control for the most part. And we're going into that feeling like we have no control to begin with. So being able to have a plan and know that, if ABC happens, then I do this, or if XYZ happens, then I do this, then can you control whether a wildfire comes through or not? No, but you're going to go into that situation feeling a lot more secure about it and a lot more in control of it than just not looking at any way to be prepared or to understand, what you should do on your operation if that is to happen.
Right. I think a big part too that has to be remembered is that having a plan is great, but a plan that's a piece of paper on a shelf somewhere, it's really not very helpful. So, having an actual plan that has been exercised and practiced, and it just gives people so much more confidence. I mean, there's a reason why you have to retake CPR every 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is, because you hope that you'll remember. But if you've never practiced and that moment comes where you have to actually enact that plan, I remember watching a show one time and they had the binder on the shelf and then there was a shake, some truck hit the building or something, some stupid show. And the binder fell on the floor and all the paper scattered. And the guy was like, okay, so guess we're going to wing it now, because they had no idea what they needed to do.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think we can use that to think about our mental wellness too. So how do we best, what are some tools we can practice and use, maybe not necessarily in our day-to-day, but maybe in our week-to-week or month-to-month, especially when it comes to communication about where we're at or how we're feeling with our loved ones and with our, on-farm workers and on-farm employees, so that when stuff does happen, everyone's in a much better space to be able to communicate what's going on or to be aware of how to work with each other with that extra added factor that, life happens, right? There's always going to be something that is influencing our day-to-day.
Absolutely. And with everybody having a role and knowing what their role is and understanding how they intersect, it can give you so much more peace of mind because you know that things are being taken care of. Mm-hmm. And that you don't have to constantly be wondering and worrying if something's getting done or not. Going on a trip with your family and who's responsible for packing the passports, for example.
Yeah.
You don't want to find out at the airport that it was you.
Yes, exactly. Is there anything that you've seen over the past couple of years with what is going on? Take the floods, for example, that you saw in the community for how they came together and how they were able to support each other and the importance of that, being able to collectively move through such a big event?
I think it's a good example because we did spend a lot of time out there, and the bonding that occurred through the community was incredible. This happened late in November, and the impact was very, very long lasting. And I don't know if everybody's returned to normal at this point in time. I don't believe so. And to see the community come together to clean up fields, as an example, and help, it drove home the message that no one individual was alone in what they were dealing with. A number of farmers' wives put together, and they refer to themselves as farm wives, put together the opportunity for people to just gather and come in for a cup of coffee and a chat and somewhere to stay warm and dry. And then that developed into a resource hub where they could collect things and get things, and donations were pouring in. And people truly, emergencies and disasters, they do bring out the worst in some people, sadly, but truly they bring out the best in so many. And to see these groups of people, the houses were devastated and they couldn't live in them, but they were still off in somebody else's field helping clear stuff and pick stuff up and get them organized again. And whoever had the ability to cook or bake or do anything like that was donating to those who didn't. And I think knowing that you were part of a larger group and all in it for each other, it provided a lot of encouragement and a lot of support for each person's self. It was pretty wonderful to see and be part of.
Yeah, and that's such a good message for anyone watching to understand that you don't need to go through something as, big as having your whole operation flooded out. There are different, times in life where we have different emotional shocks, and it could be, depending on what's on our plate, it could be something that is really big, or it could be something that might seem small at a different time, but because our plates are just full with life, that it's really challenging. But the fact of trying to hold on to that piece that we're not alone, and stressing how important it is when something does happen to not pull back and isolate ourselves, but to continue to be around people and to have conversations with people and connect with people, even if you're not ready to share everything you're going through, but just not isolating, and being able to understand that people do know what you're going through, or they can connect with you on that, because they may not have gone through the exact thing, but they've gone through something similar. And I know just from some of the conversations I've had, across Canada, people don't always necessarily even need to have that conversation, but to know that someone else has been through that or understands is part of what takes a weight off their shoulders.
Almost definitely. And you're right, they don't have to, nothing has to be said necessarily. Just to know that you've got somebody by your side in the event that you need them there can just be it's such a huge piece for anybody. So it's very helpful.
That's going back to that empathy piece over sympathy.
I was just thinking of, I watch a lot the Winnie the Pooh stuff, and Piglet sitting by himself, and Pooh comes up and he says, "How are you doing?" He says, "I'm not doing great." And so Pooh sits down and he says, I'm here for you." And he says, "I don't want to talk, but that's fine. I'm here."
Yeah.
And it's, so many of those things, just knowing that you have somebody that you can reach out to if you need to. It's like when you get the shock of, you just find out that somebody that you were close to passed away. It's knowing that there's somebody else that you can turn to when you need to, or if you need to, rather than having to just kind of suffer through it and figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. For anyone in BC specific in agriculture that's looking to connect with the supports that you guys have or the counseling you guys have going on right now, can you talk a little bit about that?
I would love to. So we have very recently signed a fabulous agreement, and this will continue on now for 3 full years, where anybody working in agriculture or related to agriculture or part of agriculture, the key word is I am in agriculture, has access for free services to mental health professionals, counselors, who know about agriculture. So they're not going to suggest that you take the week off. They're not going to suggest that, why don't you spend some time outside, which are all wonderful ideas for those in other lines of work, perhaps. But telling a farmer who just spent 4 days seeding and was outside for 16 hours a day to, why don't you go for a nice long walk? Probably not the best piece of advice. So these are all agriculturally aware counselors who They invoice AgSafe, no questions asked. They don't tell us anything except that this was somebody in agriculture in this region of the province. We specifically request, we don't want to know anything else. So it's a very private matter, and we want to make sure that we can keep it that way for everybody. Beyond that, we've got lots of training sessions coming up to help individuals learn how to have the conversation. So if somebody says, I'm not okay, you don't turn tail and run the other way. So, if somebody has some emotional shock that is presented, it's we're hoping to provide a lot of resources and tools that can say, I'm here for you.
Mhm.
Again, the empathy, sympathy piece.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
empower people to have those conversations. Even if it's just like, can I help you connect to that person? I might not feel
exactly.
comfortable having a conversation, but can I help you connect with that person?
Exactly. So it's very exciting. It's kind of a double-edged sword as far as I'm concerned, because it makes me sad that people need access to these resources and they utilize them, but I'm so grateful that we're able to provide them for those who do need them, and hope that it can make a difference.
Mhm. Yeah, we are thrilled that you guys have had funding renewed for 3 years. And for anyone watching in different provinces, if you go to our website, you can find a whole list of what supports are there. As mental health falls under health and is provincial, every province varies as far as what they have for agricultural specific support. And coming online in June of 2023, we will have a national peer-to-peer support platform as well through Do More Ag called Ag Talk, which is monitored 24/7 by clinicians as well to help make it safe. Is there anything we didn't touch on, Wendy, that you would like to touch on before we sign off?
Um, Off the top of my head, I can't think of something, but I'm really excited for this program of yours to get started. It's I think that's going to be incredibly valuable, because it does, as you've explained to me a little bit, it does provide a level of anonymity, which is so important to so many people if they're reaching out for just some advice, not necessarily help, but advice that could lead to help. But then to know that there's somebody there who can make sure that they're safe, and that, if they need further support, that they can get it. We're just really hopeful that people will, reduce the stigma of it's okay. It's okay to not feel okay, and to talk to somebody about it. And, if you need to reach out, then reach out. I think it's a lot different from, even 5 years ago. It's so much different. It can be really scary when you're feeling a way that you're not familiar with. And if your tractor's broken, you call your maintenance guy. And if your leg is broken, you go get that fixed. Well, if your mind isn't working properly, why not talk to somebody?
Mhm.
So I'm pleased that the younger generation, I have members of my family who deal with mental wellness challenges, and the fact that they're comfortable saying, I got to call my counselor. The thing I find it's almost entertaining is that it's like a trophy. If you're in LA, my therapist this, my therapist that, and it's such a big thing. Well, why is that so difficult for our group, who we, appreciate so much? If they're struggling, get some help. It's available. And in BC, it's free.
Mhm. Well, and I love the, like, if your tractor breaks down or your piece of equipment, or, something happens in your barns, you're not gonna, even if it's after hours, you don't wait. You pick up the phone and you make that call. And we need to think of ourselves the same way, because we don't have healthy operations if we don't have healthy people to begin with. And I think between, what you guys are doing, what we're doing, what other provinces are doing, we're finally getting to that level where there is support out there, and there's support that you don't have to pay for, and there's support that works really well together. So maybe it's, jumping on the platform just to post something and have a, anonymous conversation online between sessions, or right when something happens, waiting to connect to someone else. But just, yeah, help is out there. There's a lot of places now where help is free. So please, 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 anyone watching, don't hesitate to reach out when something is going on. And you don't have to be in crisis. You could just be, hey, I got some questions. This happened today. I did this. Maybe I could have done it better. Is there some tools to help me do it better next time, or go through that in a way that's, a little less overwhelming? That's what people are there for.
100%. 100%. And I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you and your organization through all this, Megs. It's been absolutely amazing, and I've learned so much. And I'm really looking forward to a long relationship.
You as well, Wendy. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us and for being part of Talk It Out. Anyone looking for more information, you can head over to AgSafe BC's website or Do More Ag's website. And please continue to talk it out or type it out soon. And thank you for watching. Take care.